Good afternoon, people. It's your man Joshua Pondexter. We are just had a little technical difficulty with the mic, but we are live. It is our Wednesday lunch and learn. So, without any further ado, we're going to jump right into this conversation. We're talking about revocable versus irrevocable trust, right? Hear a lot of information about on the internet about get an irrevocable trust. I got clients calling me talking about, should I get an irrevocable trust? Well, let's look at it. Let's look at the difference. I'm going to give you the quick once over, but we're going to give you enough detail so you can make a determination, right? So revocable versus irrevocable trust, irrevocable. A trust, well, that's right. First of all, let's look at what a trust is. A trust is an estate planning tool. And of course, you have an estate and you want to plan it just like you plan everything else. You want to plan for the future and the protection of your estate that you may consider using if you want to go beyond drafting a last will and testament. The one key thing to decide is whether to establish a revocable or irrevocable trust. Both have their pros and cons, and one may be more appropriate than the other, depending on your financial situation and needs. If you're thinking of adding a trust to your financial plan, it helps to know how the two compare. Consider working with a financial advisor to incorporate estate planning into your financial plan. That's me, financial advisor, JoshuaPondexter.com. Go schedule you an. Sorry, my mic keep going in and out. That's not a good thing, right? So the mic, so revocable versus irrevocable. This what you call struggle streaming. We're going to get through this without this mic blinking out on us, right? What is a trust? Before taking a closer look at revocable or irrevocable trust, it helps to know what a trust is. It's simply, in simple terms, it's a legal entity that allows you to transfer assets to the ownership of a trustee, right? So it is its own separate entity. It's a legal entity, right? And you can transfer your assets to be managed by a trustee. A living trust can be revocable or irrevocable, right? Irrevocable, right? So living trust can be either or. You can act as your own trustee or name someone else to do the job, a professional trustee, right? A trustee, whether it's you or someone else, assume fiduciary roles, meaning that they're required to act in the best interest of the trust beneficiary. So you put property in a trust, you have a beneficiary. So that in the best interest of that beneficiary, you're not going to have a spendthrift, mentality and just spend up your money. Beneficiaries are the people you name to benefit from the trust. So, for example, you might set up a trust fund for the benefit of your spouse or children. When you create the trust document, you can spell out exactly how you want the assets to be in the trust to be managed and distributed to the beneficiary. Okay. All right. So let's take this larger, right? So my people can see. All right. I want you to see what's going on. Right. So the beneficiary are the people you name to benefit from the trust. So for an example, you might set up a trust fund for the benefit of your spouse or your children. When you create the trust document, you can spell out exactly how you want the assets in the trust to be managed and distributed to the beneficiary. It is a trustee job to make sure the wishes are followed. So when you create a trust, they're going to follow your wishes if you have someone other than yourself, right? Revocable versus irrevocable or irrevocable trust. What's the difference, right? There are many different types of trust you can establish. For example, there are guarantor trusts. That means that you set it up. ABC trust, that's a trust that you have, and then when you die, it sets up another trust. And there's testamentary trust, those that are set up after you die. Special needs trust. They all have one thing in common. All of those trusts are either revocable or irrevocable, right? So that's the thing that they have in common. What is a revocable trust? Simply, it's a trust that can be changed or terminated any time during the lifetime of the guarantor. That's me, the person making the trust. That's the guarantor, right? So that means you could add or remove beneficiaries at any time. Have some new grandchildren, you can add them to the mix, right? God forbid you get divorced. All right, you can remove somebody. Transfer new assets into the trust or remove ones that are already in it. So if you have a home and you sell it, you can take it out, sell it, buy a new house, put it in there. Boom, that's a beautiful thing. Change the terms of the trust concerning how assets should be managed or distributed, right? So you can say, well, hey, I had decided that I'm going to go ahead and let my 21-year-old get all the money when I die. Well, no, you might change your mind and wait and decide that they should get it in chunks, right? Or at age 35. A revocable trust is known as a living trust. When you pass away, a revocable trust automatically become irrevocable, right? That means no further changes can be made to its term. So that's a beautiful thing. So people's like, well, what happens when I die? The only thing that happens when you die, nothing can be changed. It becomes irrevocable, and those assets can remain in that trust for 20 years. And then they have to be distributed after that time period. Okay. What is a irrevocable trust? Irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust is essentially permanent, and it cannot usually be changed for any reason. Cannot usually be changed, right? So it can be changed, but it's going to be very, very difficult. You got to get all the people together. So if my father set one up and he put 10-unit building in there, he want to change it, I don't think I'm going to agree with that, Pops. Right? So you got to get all the people to agree. If you set up an irrevocable trust during your lifetime, any assets you transfer to the trust would have to remain in the trust. You couldn't add or remove beneficiaries or change the terms of the trust. So when you put things in an irrevocable trust, no changes will be made, right? So there are numerous of irrevocable trusts, right? Qualified domestic trust, grantor retained annuity trust, qualified personal residence trust, generational skipping trust. That's for the tax situations. Special needs trust. You want to take care of a special need spouse or child. A charitable trust, right? So there's many types. So what is the irrevocable trust? Each type of irrevocable trust is either a testamentary or a living trust. The testamentary trust is created in a last will and testament and comes to an existence only after the settlers die. Don't want that. Don't want to go to probate, because the testamentary trust doesn't take effect until after the settlers die. He or she can make changes up until death, at which point the trust becomes irrevocable. The trust won't transfer assets outside of the probate, since the grantor owns the assets at the time of death, right? So got to go to probate. Simple. That's what you're trying to avoid with your estate planning. Not trying to go to probate because it's a lengthy, expensive process. Revocable trust pros and cons. Let's get at it. The main advantage of choosing a revocable trust is flexibility. A revocable trust allows you to make changes whereas an irrevocable trust does not. You got that flexibility. You can add new property, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all those new things you can protect inside your trust. That helps if you're concerned about your financial situations or need changing at some point, and you want to make sure your trust can still meet those needs, right? So if you are growing your wealth, growing your legacy, or those type of things, yeah, they're going to be changing. If you set up a irrevocable or irrevocable trust, you can't make any changes. The revocable trust can also offer peace of mind if you're worried about becoming incapacitated, not being able to manage your assets, as long as your trust document is clear on what you want. When your trustee is bound, then your trustee is bound to follow your wishes. A revocable trust can also allow that your heirs to bypass probates once you pass away. So that's the biggie, right? You don't want to go to probate. So trust held property avoids probate if they're created when you're alive. Revocable testament, irrevocable, if you wait till after you're dead, then it's got to go through the probate process. The cons of revocable trust. One downside is that a revocable trust doesn't offer the same type of protection against creditors as an irrevocable trust. That's true. Doesn't get the same type of protection because when the irrevocable trust, you have moved the property over to the trust. You no longer own it, right? So the trust owns it. So now you're getting away all the ownership rights, all the tax deductions that you could possibly get from those assets, and be able to sell them, right? And buy bigger assets. Yeah. So if you're sued, creditors could still attempt to attach your trust assets to satisfy the judgment. They can attempt. Yes, they can, right? Don't mean it'll be successful. Also, assets in a revocable trust are part of your taxable estate, meaning they are subject to federal estate taxes when you die. Federal estate taxes are due for the amount above the current exemption. In 2024, if you're single, it's $13.61 million. If you're an individual, 27. If you are a married couple, 27.22 million. Right. So we're talking about big money. Most people will never hit these windows. Right. So estate taxes ain't really a big deal for the majority of Americans. Right. Irrevocable trust, pros and cons. An irrevocable trust can have its benefits, but there are also some dangers to keep an eye on. See the eye on before deciding to move forward. Here are the most common pros and cons of our irrevocable trust. Okay. In addition to protecting assets from creditors, right? Because you don't own the assets, irrevocable trust can also come in handy when managing estate tax obligations, right? Ooh, that's for wealthy people who worrying about that, right? From a tax standpoint, assets are owned by the trust, not you, which makes it possible to sidestep estate taxes. Holding assets in an irrevocable trust can also be useful if you're trying to qualify for Medicaid to help you pay for long-term care and want to avoid having to spend down assets. Interesting, right? Not necessarily true, though, right? There's a 5-year look back period that the Medicaid state federal program has to look back, right? So you got to get that 60-month window planning. And those Medicaid laws are changing all the time, right? They don't care if you got a trust, whether your trust is irrevocable or is revocable, right? These laws are constantly changing, right? So don't let someone guarantee you, right? Because as of this moment, there's no guarantees on that fact. Cons of a irrevocable trust, right? The downsides of irrevocable trust is that you can't change it. You can't act as your own trustee either. You got to get a professional trustees. Once the trust is set up and the assets are transferred, you no longer have control over them, which can be a huge danger if you weren't confident about the reason you're setting up the trust to begin with. So I have had people contact me talking about they want to set up an irrevocable trust and they're 40 years old. Come on. Are you serious? I've been in the financial sector for over 3 decades, and I have witnessed and had clients who have got bad deaf side advice. Whatever you do, honey, don't change this. And they keep it, and the laws change, right? So no, don't lock yourself up like this. Which is better, revocable or irrevocable? So this just depends on your money category, right? Let's look at that. The revocable trust might be preferable when the value of estate is less than the federal estate tax exemption. So that's all of y'all who I'm talking to, right? So if you're an individual, you got $14 million, your family got $27 million, you ain't gonna be hollering at your boy. You want to retain the use control over your assets while restrictions or establishing the trust, right? So you want to maintain control because once I said, you put a piece of real estate in there, then it's like, wow, the market is high. I want to sell that and go buy something different. And so you can't do it. Or the stock is going crazy and I got it in this irrevocable trust. I can't make a change to it. I want to liquidate some of that and go buy some other stuff, right? An irrevocable trust might be preferable when the value of assets exceed the federal exempt taxation, right? You got over 14 million as an individual. As a couple, you got over 27 million. Come on now. This is the only reason that you would go irrevocable, people. You don't mind giving up control of your assets after establishing the trust. People don't like that. People like to have control, right? That's why you got everything in your name, because you want to feel a sense of control. You want to protect your assets from creditors. Since assets in an irrevocable trust aren't considered available to you, they are protected from certain creditors and lawsuits. Certain, not all, right? Now, if you do something illegal, that thing can be pierced, right? So that's an irrevocable trust, which is better. For 99% of all Americans, the revocable trust is your best option. See if I got it. All right. So I think that's the end of my slideshow, people. Here's the deal. Final point on which is better. If you rich, you might want to look at irrevocable trust. That means that as an individual, I'm a decimillionaire. I got $14 million, right? And not only do I meet the money threshold, now I don't mind moving those assets out of my control, right? Because I don't need them anymore, right? I can save them, preserve them for the next generation. But when I'm still using my assets, when I'm still growing my assets, the revocable living trust is what's best for you. Okay, so I think we are out of our time slot here. We just wanted to give you that information, revocable or irrevocable trust, right? So get informed. Once again, contact me, your financial advisor, to do some estate planning for you. We specialize in that. Go to joshuapondexter.com, anywhere in the country. Set up you a complimentary consultation. As always, we ask that you like, share, comment on this video. Appreciate you, JD. Right? And that's what we're doing here. We're providing information. JD Mac. Okay. All right, JD. Thanks for tuning in. So That's what we're doing, people. Informing. We back doing, we had a 30-day hiatus. We refresh. We're back doing our Wednesday lunch and learn. Tune in on all these platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Right. So we're going to be coming with some more topics for you every week. Something to make you go, JoshuaPondexter.com. Always importing. We wish you love, peace, and soul. Bye for now.